Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Future of Work podcast. Really great to conduct another one of these episodes where we're trying to uncover what the future of work really looks like, and how is it going to impact us in the professional world, or people looking for jobs, or recruiters recruiting, whatever it may be. Today, I'm really honoured to be joined by Christopher Miller. Chris Miller, I'll let you introduce yourself. Is a brand consultant, I suppose I could say, brand consultant, yeah?
Yes.
At ManpowerGroup. Real strong opinions and thoughts, but also a lot of understanding of the data side of it, which is really important, and the factual side of the future of work and how things are moving. So I can't wait for this show today. I said to you last week, Chris, I'm really excited. Apologies we had to postpone this. It was a nativity. What can I do? But it was great to go there anyway. Anyway, I'll let you introduce yourself and then we'll jump into it, buddy. Oh, just a caveat. I do have my little baby son over there playing, so he will be moving around in the background, but don't worry, he won't disturb us. This is the future of work, isn't it?
That is certainly the future of work, yes. And I'm sure everyone on the call here is used to that. So thank you so much for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I can share some interesting insights of what we're seeing from recent data. I am, as you said, Antonio, a senior brand consultant within the ManpowerGroup. I work with, or align to, so I sit within the marketing department, but really aligned to a number of our strategic clients. And we work with them to help them, one, understand what's happening in the market, and then be able to respond to that in the market. And that's why it's important for us to keep our finger on the pulse in terms of what's happening, latest trends, and the statistics side of that, in order to be able to help devise and put in place effective recruitment strategies, but also advise our clients on what they should be doing, and how they need to be adapting and changing as we see the markets changing.
Amazing. Thank you for that great introduction. So what are you noticing? What's the biggest standout thing for you at the moment in the biggest conversation you're having with clients at the moment in ManpowerGroup? What's really trending?
There's a number of things, but I think the biggest conversation is just the sheer volume of roles that our clients are seeing at the moment. And we're fortunate that we've scheduled this meeting for today because ONS have just released their figures. And we've also, as ManpowerGroup, just released our ManpowerGroup Employment Outlook survey, which has just come out here today. So hopefully, and that was just published this morning. So forgive me, I'm not going to have all of the data because I haven't had a chance to read through it all. But what I've tried to do for today is just give you some key snapshots of what we're seeing. But I thought what might be interesting is just to talk of what's been happening in the market at the moment and what our clients have been seeing. So I'm sure you're all aware of this huge increase or very sharp increase in the number of vacancies. And as of this morning, so ONS, I had a look at their data, and we had a new record of 1,219,000. That is between September to November. That's the number of vacancies that are actually available within the market. And that trend has really started post-pandemic. So all businesses, a majority of businesses, had a really sharp recovery. And I think the whole industry has had a really sharp recovery, faster than anyone had anticipated while we were going through the lockdown. And as we progress into that causes a number of knock-on effects. So one, we have this huge number of vacancies. I think we also need to make sure that we take into account the I suppose the unemployment rates as well. So we started to see at one stage, at early stages of entering that, unemployment was really high. And we are starting to see those numbers slowly reducing. So if we compare this last quarter to the quarter previous, we've seen a slight reduction in the employment rate. So that's good, and that's telling us that we are seeing the unemployed then getting converted into those vacant roles. It's not as much as it needs to be, because what we're seeing as well is that there is a skills gap between those vacancies being advertised and the unemployed. So the predominant movement in the market at the moment is coming from job to job. So people are moving from one position to another, as opposed to those people currently in unemployment. And that's been causing this sharp increase has really created or flipped the market on its head to say that now it's a candidate-driven market. They are really in the driving seat, and that then causes a whole lot of knock-on effects for our clients that we're seeing. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge, is one, just this sharp increase in the number of vacancies, all businesses across all sectors, across all sizes. That's companies from 0 to 10 people up to those businesses that are 2,500 plus, all recruiting across all sectors.
Just to jump in there, so the increase in vacancies, this is what I think a lot of people can't get their heads around, is what is obviously we had lockdown, but yeah, why have we had such a crazy increase in vacancies, and why have we never seen anything like this before, you know, prior to lockdown? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? And I think a lot of people can't get their head around that. Because the flow was there, and surely the skills were there before, they should be there now to match the vacancies, right? So
yeah, well, you're right in some respects there, that there were some similarities, but a lot of businesses took the opportunity during lockdown to change what they were doing. They had to adapt in order to be able to survive the pandemic. So if you take into account things like retail and manufacturing, they have had to transform their businesses, especially from a retail side, transforming one to online shopping. Those that were a little bit slow off the boat to do it have sort of found it harder to catch up with the rest of them. Those that already started that journey pre-pandemic really benefited from that influx of people shopping online. But it's changed the way that we, go into stores now. You'll see an increase in the number of checkout, or those automated touchscreen checkouts. You will see, more bookings being taken over mobile apps or phones, and also people paying by mobile devices now. So the businesses had to change during that pandemic, and a number of them did. But coming out of that, they have then accelerated their plans. So where they had expansion plans that had to be shelved prior to the pandemic or during the pandemic, everybody just opened the floodgates at the same time, and that's why we saw the spike. Great for our economy, because businesses are thriving, and that's always great to see. And we do have vacancies there. There are job opportunities for those people that want them. I think the people that are getting the top talent at the moment are those businesses that are really able to respond to the candidate needs, because they've got the opportunity to be able to evaluate a variety of different roles, including their own, what they're currently doing at the moment. They can be more picky and fussy in terms of going after the types of roles that are going to give them the flexibility, are going to give them, maybe some additional holiday, or better training, or upskilling. So I think that's an interesting dynamic of those businesses that are really have responded well to it, and quickly and in an agile way, are now being able to attract in that talent.
So
And
these these, sorry to interrupt you there, these vacancies, so are you noticing a lot of your clients looking for remote workers outside of the UK or more offshore talent now, because everyone's coming online, the rate at which, the English language is spoken around the world, or whatever language you need, but the English language is spoken around the world. So are you noticing a trend where clients are shifting from to more offshore model? I don't want to call it offshore because that's an old school way of saying it, right? It's remote. That's what it is, right? Remote workers, wherever you are, globally. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, 100%. And there certainly is a trend starting towards that. There's obviously complications with tax, and as long as they've got entities that those people can work in additional countries, you can't just work from home and be, you can't work from home in France and work in the UK. Essentially, you're going to run into some tax issues. So remote working in the UK has certainly changed since the pandemic as well. There are far greater now roles that are offering that flexibility, and it could be both the opportunity to work from home, the opportunity to work at various different offices or locations within the UK, so you don't necessarily need to go into one place. So there's a variety of different ways that organizations are managing to offer that. And there's also, I suppose, the flexibility that they're offering around times as well. So it could be part week, so you could be job sharing. That's starting to become more popular. You've got organizations shifting the time differences, so you might be able to start early and finish early, or start later and finish later. So there's a whole lot of creativity happening within organizations to be able to, one, offer that remote working, and two, about the flexibility of work.
And are you noticing any sort of pains in terms of productivity when we're talking about these flexi hours, or and another thing which I've got a question here around is the 4-day work week and your opinion on that. But are you noticing any sort of productivity issues with your customers there? And if so, what does that look like?
Not so much productivity issues, because I think when people are and this was proven during the pandemic, that when people are working from home, they tend to work longer because they don't have to commute, so that might take a proportion of the day out. So, and as soon as they close their laptop at home, then they're home. And they may use the time previously that they commuted in to work and catch up on what they need to do. So I think there's no issues around productivity. I think there's still some issues with line managers' trust, in terms of where they've been able to see the team and walk around and look over their shoulder and see what they're doing. They can't do that at the moment. And there's also some, I suppose, challenges with collaboration, that you can't just talk over the desk and find out something in sort of real time. What we have to do now is book an appointment with somebody, or try and get hold of them on Teams or whatever tools they're using. Have a call with them, find out what you're needing, and then carry on with your day. So I don't think I don't think it's affected productivity, and there's no evidence at the moment that I'm seeing that remote working does that at all.
I think what you're saying is it's more around the I don't know if it's comfort or efficiency. Efficiency of productivity and efficiency are two different things, right? But if I want to say, for instance, I run a technology business, recruitment CRM business, and say we want to quickly hash out an idea around, on a certain sprint or whatever it may be. When we were in the office, we were able to just stand around, just talk it out. It would take literally 2 minutes, right? Now it's let's get on a link, let's schedule a meeting, let's mess up, because that flow just isn't there. And I find that when you're at home and, say, for instance, you're in a task, you're really in that task. And so if someone messages you, you say, I'll ping you later on. Very rarely today are people just jumping on ad hoc calls, right? It's their scheduled meetings and all that. So I think efficiency for me is an issue. But yeah, from my opinion, my personal opinion, productivity, not an issue. I don't think, I haven't experienced it. Yeah. What do you think about, actually, so what's your personal opinion on working from home? Do you enjoy it?
I do. And so I work in Canary Wharf and I live in St Albans. So it is a fair commute every morning when I was going in. It does give me the flexibility, like I said, just to close the laptop at the end of the day, and I know I'm at home. I don't have to sit on trains and catch, buses and the like. So I think that's great, and it does allow you to be able to spend more time with the family, which is great. But you do miss out on key elements, like you said, around collaborating and that ad hoc way of working that we were kind of used to, just to get people together and say, what are your thoughts? So I think going forward, what we see is, one of the trends is that will certainly become a more of a hybrid approach that organizations, not everyone's going to be able to, will say to their staff, you need to be in all the time. There are some businesses that will demand that. And but that's going to be really specific to certain industries, and obviously to those businesses that where people need to be in every day. They cannot work from home. But we've even seen now some things like the frontline office workers roles are becoming more sort of remote as well. And even in some production areas, there are roles that can be done remotely. So I think it's certainly going to be a hybrid where people will arrange to meet in an office or a central point. They will use that time for their collaboration and then spend some of that time in, either at home or another location within the business.
And how do you feel about, so I read an article the other day around there's been a rise in sort of surveillance now for employees at home. So it was sort of something like 6 out of 10 employees have started monitoring their employees' computer usage at home. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's an invasion of privacy? Do you think it's a positive thing, or do you think that you should just trust your employees? I mean, I'd love to know your take on that.
Well, I've always worked in the sort of recruitment field or recruitment marketing, and we obviously as a business have a lot of candidate data. So I'm used to working within a very strict environment, and since GDPR came into place, that even got tighter, and the businesses need to be able to protect that data. And I think that goes for any business, whether they are handling customer data, and there are certain sensitivities with that data that people, that the business needs to control. We initially thought this was the case when, working from home within the finance sector. How can somebody be sitting at home and handling my bank account, and people walking past the laptop and things. So certain security needs to be in place, and I understand why businesses needs to do that. But that is not about monitoring, people's what they're doing and turning on their camera. It'll just be making sure that they are not using specific sites like file sharing sites where sensitive data can be stored or shared.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And for you, because we had a leadership podcast about 2 months ago now, and we had around 6 people on, and we were talking about the 4-day work week and what that's led to and whatnot. So, what do you think about the 4-day work week? Would you like to see it implemented in ManpowerGroup? Are your customers starting to implement it? What are your thoughts on it?
We do have that as part of our flexible working within the group. So, but I think it's really important that especially in this climate that we're in now, that businesses need to be able to accommodate what candidates are looking for. So regardless of what that is, some are just going to be looking for higher salaries and wages and, starting bonuses and, the financial side of it, which is a very difficult for businesses to keep keep up with. But as at the moment, we've seen globally between a 8% to 16% increase, and that varies depending on the country, geography, and also the sectors, increase in wages. Now, that is because the talent that people are looking for is scarce. The only way that they can bring in that talent or attract them is by offering an increased wage. That's then creating the counter offer culture that we're seeing at the moment, that a lot of businesses, in order to retain their staff, are having to offer incentives for people to stay. And that could be an increase in their salary or a retention bonus or something of the like. But there is a ceiling to that. We can't just keep on increasing the salary without the productivity increasing at the same rate. Otherwise, that bubble will burst at some point.
So what do you envisage happening if it continues at this rate? Like, just obviously this is a personal opinion. What do you envisage happening if with the industry?
What we're starting to see is that businesses are offering non-financial incentives, and that could be anything like additional holidays that they can add in, or unlimited holidays. And we've already, there's a number of examples in the market of that. Or it could be upskilling and training and career progression, or really even giving them access to mentors within the business that are going to help them develop. And those are the areas that we're seeing that our clients are now starting to focus in. It's about, and I suppose this is born out of that, the talent at the moment and the skills in the market are very hard to find, and you can't just throw money at it to the end of the day. An alternative to that is about training up and re-educating and reskilling your current employees. So how can you grow them? And that's everything from, graduates and apprenticeships, and creating a very clear career path for them and providing them with the necessary training so that they can then grow into those roles. But it doesn't just stop at that early careers level. It's all the way through the business. You could bringing in or organizations have spent time now in looking into who their high performers are, and those people with the potential to do that role, but may not necessarily have the skills now. So it's really identifying potential and then being able to upskill those people into filling those vacancies.
Those high performers, I mean, so I don't know if you've seen sort of the debate around equality of outcome, equality of opportunity. Now, obviously, if people are looking at solely the high performers, what does that mean for the sort of lesser performers? Is there a lot of coaching going on within that? Because I think a lot of people would say I think if you're a high performer, you deserve to get where you're going. I think, in my personal opinion, if you worked really hard, or you do work really hard to get into a position, then you deserve to be promoted and all that sort of stuff. There's a school of thought around, but there's also equality of outcome. What do you think about that?
In terms of the work that they produce? Yeah. I think everybody for their roles should have KPIs that they need to meet, and their line managers need to be able to manage that and make sure that they are meeting that, whether they're working remotely or not. A number of my team members at the moment have always been remote, so working all over the country. So even though I would travel into the office every day, into Canary Wharf, my team wouldn't necessarily all be there. And I think you need to have you need to monitor the performance of your team, but you also need to make sure that everyone is learning and growing every time they come to work, and be able to nurture them. So those people that are not your high performers, because not everyone is going to be a high performer, and a lot of people don't want to be a high performer. Some people just want to come in and do their job, and they do a fantastic job, but have got no interest in climbing up the ranks within an
Yeah,
organization.
really
They
agree.
they want to come in, do their job to the best of their ability, and then leave. And there's
Mm,
nothing wrong with that. So you've
yeah.
got a whole variety of different personalities within organizations, and they all play a role. What you've got to be able to do is to make sure that you are encouraging each and every one of them to do their very best. And if you can spot an opportunity for somebody, whether they're a high performer or just somebody great at their job, what you need to focus on now is how can you train them into those skills that you either need now, or that you potentially will need in the future.
Yeah, and we discussed this last week on the telephone. We were discussing around the point around people have got this short-term challenge, which they need the skills. They need the skills right now to fulfill these roles, right? But then they also have the long-term challenge around future skills, and then how we're going to be developing our teams and whatnot, and growing them within the organization. The long-term challenge of so the short-term challenge requires skills that are ready available. So do you find a lot of companies are not really thinking about the long term? They're thinking just more about the short term, how we fill these roles, and not investing in the whole. And I think you said about the 4 Bs, which I can't, I forget them, right? And it'd be great.
Correct. Yeah.
That's great. The 4 Bs. But do you think a lot of companies are forgetting, or sort of just parking that development piece so that they can just solve their short term challenge right now?
I think they're being forced to think about it at the moment. I don't think that they've got a choice. If we look at, the volume of vacancies and roles that we have available just here in the UK, and it's not dissimilar across Europe and the rest of the globe. If we look at the employment outlook for the first quarter of next year, we had a positive 37% across all of the organizations that we have researched and spoken to. So I don't think that they are going to be able to find that. And what we're seeing at the moment within the UK, sorry if I'm jumping around a bit, I'm just thinking how to rephrase this, but within
Really
the UK, the previous quarter, we were leading in terms of our outlook. So what we're expecting and forecasting the demand to be. And we have now been overtaken by several of our European partners. So we're seeing that these organizations, and it such as Spain, Turkey, Sweden, Belgium, Israel, Germany, Australia, Portugal, Netherlands, Ireland.
Republic of Ireland, yeah. I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
Because Ireland, I was actually in Ireland seeing family a couple of weeks ago, and I was speaking to a cab driver, and he said, "Do you know we're now the only English speaking country in the EU, right? The main language is English language, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So that made me think, right, around access routes, supply chains, talent supply as well.
Well, they have the highest. Ireland and Netherlands at the moment have the highest positive outlook for the first quarter of next year. So they're looking at a positive 47%.
Wow.
In the UK, we had a positive 32%. Now, if we look at the previous quarter, the UK was a lot higher than all of those countries that I just listed out, like Portugal and Austria and Germany, etc. So Europe is going to be recruiting as well. and they're going to have a high demand for staff. So it's not a case that we can just think, right, if we can't get it here in the UK, we'll be able to go and look elsewhere, because those countries are also going to have a high demand.
And not only that, is that the freedom of movement is easier now in Europe, right? So
correct.
So
Yeah.
we're sort of, the UK is sort of in a perfect storm, aren't we? We're in a perfect storm at the moment.
Yes, but it is an opportunity for us to start upskilling and training
Yeah.
our staff, and there isn't going to be a quick fix for this. It's you know, the skills on the market. There's a certain amount of poaching that we can do from each other and pulling from skills from one company into another. What we need to be focusing on is educating and bringing, and that process has started. It's not like we're starting from the you know, ground zero at the moment. It's well in place. What we need to do is to make sure that employers are now accelerating those plans. So what can they really put in place to be able to train those existing people?
And do you find there's so we're talking about the graduate programs as well, getting, you know, these great people who are coming in and you know, who are graduates, and then upskilling them in a direction. I used to work for Accenture, and of course, you know, the graduate program was a major thing for those guys, right? So, and then people would stay in consulting for the rest of their life. So do you find that there's or do you know of anything, and is there any sort of projects at the moment that companies are going through where they're hiring, say, for instance, middle-aged people who worked in, say, retail all their lives as assistants, store assistants, managers, and then they're now bringing into, say, development, or, you know, whatever it may be, specialist industry? Do you know what I mean? Is there anything of that sort?
I haven't seen that at the moment, but it was interesting what you meant about what we are seeing is that the older generation now is starting to be tapped in. So those people that are between 50 and 70 that have years of experience that potentially wouldn't have been considered for these roles because for a number of reasons are now being considered. The number of mum returners now that have the ability to you know, find work and go back into roles because they may require some of the flexibility that these organizations are now willing to offer other organizations. So it is opening up opportunities for certain areas that may have been overlooked in the past. And like you mentioned earlier around the, you know, the 4Bs, and that's a principle that we work with within ManpowerGroup and across a number of our different sectors. And that's really build, borrow, buy, and bridge. And that build is around building the talent yourself. So it's training to fit. The borrow is looking at that contingent workforce. What can you bring in for a limited period of time? So consultancy type roles or fixed term projects. Those that you buy, so your permanent hires that you will be recruiting in, and then bridge, which is the internal mobility side of it and moving people from roles within the organization. So what transferable skills do your employees have, and what potentially could they be moved into with some training and development? But what's most interesting is around that building, that train to fit. And we're doing a lot of work with our clients now around identifying which types of roles are going to be a struggle for them to fill in the long term, just because of the sheer demand that they're experiencing in the market, and then having a look at putting in specific training programs to really make sure that that candidate or that employee is then brought up to speed within a 12 to 18 months, 24-month period, depending on the type of training. And we're seeing some great results from that now. And what's benefiting from that is our clients or the employers are not getting caught in this trap of just throwing money out into the market, increasing salaries or recruitment bonuses, those golden handshakes. And what they're doing is rather investing that money in upskilling their current staff. And that's one appreciated. The employees or candidates and employees are responding well to that, those sort of incentives, and it's helping the business as well. So it becomes a win-win for everyone.
And what do you think the biggest technology innovation is going to be for the future of work? I have a couple of ideas I want to run past you. So you'll be my sort of market research for today for our next new product, right? No, I would love to understand, what do you think the biggest technological innovation will be? And apologies here for my son. This is how we do.
That's fine. No, that's great. I love it. When you say specifically to recruitment,
I think for
or the industry,
recruitment, future of work, the way we work together and interact.
I think what we're going to see a big uplift in is going to be around AI-driven assessments and those type of solutions. One of even like AI-driven CV sifting. What we're seeing at the moment is that in order to deal sometimes with the volume of applications that are being received, and I suppose because of globalization as well, people are applying from all over that maybe don't necessarily have the rights to work in each of the different locations that they're applying in.
I've noticed a massive trend in that actually myself. When we advertise our internal roles, or when one of my other companies are hiring for people, we've noticed that the applications for a specific region now are very diverse, and it come from different geographies, which is fantastic. I mean, one of my designers actually applied on an Indeed position, and I think Monica's might be on the call actually. One of my designers actually applied for an Indeed position in London, and she's based in Italy, right? So it's great. Sorry to interrupt anyway.
No, that's fine. So I think there's going to be certain automation that's going to be put in place to be able to help manage it from that stage, but then also about AI to be able to assess your talent internally. So remember I mentioned around it's really important for organizations to be able to identify specific skill sets that are potentially transferable into other roles, and then identify who those people are and maybe put them on training programs to help them progress their careers. AI can help with identifying those sort of skills. Does require each of the employees to be able to fill in and populate their profiles with the right skills and the types of things that they're looking for.
And then as time goes by, it will actually learn, right? It will learn better and become more sort of intuitive, I think, right?
Absolutely. There's going to be, I think, great strides in that. We've already seen a rise in, the virtual recruitment sort of process of doing virtual interviews, and I think it was a bit slow to start pre-pandemic, but that just put it firmly in place, and I think that's going to be something that will start to grow. So potentially now that sort of technology will start to improve and gain legs as well. Trying to think what else might be the next big thing coming through.
What do you think about the metaverse?
Interesting. Yeah. I'm not sure if you remember Second Life when that came out. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, was it an Xbox game?
No, it was online game that you could go into. So and Second Life, haven't been into the metaverse yet, but it sounds very similar, where you're able to go into and create a virtual well, it is, it's a virtual world. It becomes your second life, where you can create your own persona. You can, even now in Second Life, you can buy real estate, and it's virtual real estate, and you can buy virtual clothes, and but you're paying real money for that, and you can work for virtual currency and exchange it into real money. So it is interesting. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I think there's a lot of nervousness around that side of it. But it's an interesting concept. I've always loved the idea of how technology is going to advance. But I think as long as it advances in a safe way, where people can go into that world and be themselves, it's bad enough now with people pretending to be other people. Even if you look at some of the stories on dating sites of people pretending that they're different people, that just opens up that world to be.
Do you think it would be like you'll have one partnership relationship in the real world and then another relationship?
Well, I think, it's hard to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, to be honest.
Well, Bill Gates said, I don't know if you read the article, Bill Gates was talking about in the next 2 to 3 years, most virtual meetings will happen in the metaverse. Hey, and obviously I don't know how, sure he is on that, but he's quite a smart guy. So I think you can take that for what you want. But the challenge is the cost of hardware at the moment, right? And that's going to drive down significantly the more demand comes through.
Yeah.
And so I've had one of my developers now start on meta viewing, we're calling it, right? Where you'll be able to do virtual interviews in the metaverse. And I won't tell you all the features of the product, whatever, but what are your thoughts on that? It's just a bit of market research for me. One of my other developers, just before you answer, one of my other developers said, well, what's the point? We just do a video call.
Yeah, it does take that whole personal side out of it at the moment. So if I'm interviewing somebody, or one of our recruiters are interviewing a candidate, they like to be able to look them in the eye. And that's why face-to-face always wins hand down. Virtual offers you the speed, so that you can create an interview and schedule it with a line manager very quickly, and it's easy. That they don't have to go and find a meeting room. They can do it wherever they are to interview that candidate. But they do get to see the whites of their eyes. They get to look at them. They get to understand how they talk and they communicate. And I suppose it gives them the ability to be able to connect. What you miss out at the moment, and what I can't see, is if I'm talking to you, if we were doing this now and I was a virtual character and you were, we would miss out on all the nuances of, I wouldn't be able to see you, for instance, chewing your pen. So
sure. Sure. No, I agree. And probably eventually you'd have to get to a point where you would maybe be in like a gel tub, where picking up all your senses.
We're starting to get into the Matrix, aren't we?
Yeah. I think that's how it is. But if you think about the way we're going now, Chris, and it just amazes me, right? We are going in such a rapid rate of advancement in technology, right? And I think there's no one can really tell what the future holds, because it just changes all the time, and obviously people are innovating all the time. So I find, Mark Zuckerberg said it's the next frontier, the metaverse. We're gonna bet on that horse. Do you know what I mean? It might not work, but at least we're betting on it, and we're betting on it early. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that there will have legs at some point, down the line. But who knows?
Yeah. And you'll always have your early adopters that are going to get into that, and a number of people will stand back and watch and see how it plays out without investing the time. And once those early adopters have proved that it can actually work, and that there's a good I suppose return on investment, like you said, it's going to be fairly costly to start with until you can get the economies of scale and bring it down. But I think there's more important things that need to be, people need to be looking at the moment than the sort of blue sky thinking side. That's great, and there will always be those that go down that path. But from a business perspective at the moment, I think things that are, this, like the growing social polarizations and tensions at the moment that we are seeing, that require businesses to be able to stand up and speak about diversity and inclusion. And
on that point, do you find that a lot of organizations are doing enough, or are they doing it as a tick box? Because there's another school of thought around, and my job here is to be very neutral, right? So when I'm asking these questions, there's another school of thought around, companies are just tick boxing. They put their pride banner on, or they'll say Black Lives Matter, and they'll do these things, but it's more just for how they look rather than initiatives that they have internally, right? And what's actually happening and what's creating that opportunity for these for diverse candidates, for different walks of life, things around social mobility. Also, diversity is a massive thing. It's a huge. So how do you tackle it? How do you, and I'm not expecting you to have all the answers here, Chris.
It's fine.
Do you tackle it?
I think like you said, it's a huge area to talk with, but we are seeing businesses now taking real positive action in order to address certain areas. Now, it might be in not looking at the whole, trying to do everything at once. It might be certain businesses going, right, we need to sort out gender. So in terms of our diversity focus, the top one that we're going to look at focusing is gender. How do we get more female representation on our board and within our leadership teams? And how do we attract and bring that talent into it? The other might be BAME, where they look at it around, we need to again address the imbalance that we have within our business. That, what we had, 10, 20, 30 years ago, white middle-aged men, needs to change. And I think that is starting to change. And businesses are putting into plans. But like you said, there is the full spectrum of diversity, and it's all those seen and unseen disabilities as well. Then there's all the sexual orientation side of that as well that falls within D&I. It's a huge scope, and it depends on what the focus is for the business. But like you said, it's not just a case of adding a line at the bottom of each job description that they put out to say, we are a diverse workforce. You need to be able to prove it. You need to be able to show it. It needs to be evident when candidates look at your career site. It needs to be representative of the audiences that you're looking at targeting. But most of all, you need to walk the walk. What you can't have is people going onto Glassdoor and leaving poor comments about the business because you haven't lived up to what you have, sold
what your employer brand
externally.
is saying, right?
100%. It has to be authentic. You have to be able to have these the right mechanisms in place to be able to deliver on what you're saying. But what is encouraging is we are seeing strides in this area at the moment. Is businesses are taking it seriously, and they're having to, because it's being demanded by the candidates that they are interviewing, and the candidates are the ones that are in the driving seat at the moment.
Yeah, they walk. It's like the people who go into retail stores or buy things. They vote with their feet, right? And
correct
with their feet right now.
If they don't find what they're looking for, they will go elsewhere. And
100%.
What we're seeing, especially in the tech sector at the moment, which is fiercely competitive. I mean, people have talked about a war for talent in the past. My goodness, it is a war for talent at the moment. And what we're seeing is that this particular area is, oh sorry, I've lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
We're talking about diversity,
yeah,
and the war for talent, particularly in the tech area. There's a lot of people are demanding organizations to really change the way they recruit today.
exactly. Yeah. And that is, really evident that they are weighing up at the moment. If you have given them an offer, they are going to be evaluating 2-3 other offers at the same time, which means they have the choice. And unless you are going to be delivering them something that is either exactly what they're looking for, they're going to go elsewhere. And that's why this process has been accelerated, and businesses have to take the necessary steps in order to be able to deliver it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to ask you one more question before we go into questions from the audience, if anyone has any. So because we've got about 9 minutes, but do you think unconscious bias has a lot to do with the inequality in staff across organisations at all levels?
Yeah, I think
question that one, but
yeah, I think unconscious bias, everyone is capable of it and has it. So regardless of where I come from and what nationality or sexual orientation or gender or whatever, everyone, it's not common just to one specific group. And I think I can see a lot of activity happening in terms of re-educating people and making sure that they're aware of these unconscious bias. And also what we're seeing as well is, I suppose, automation and AI and technology can help us tackle this as well. So when I am writing a piece of copy to go on a website, or if I'm writing a job advertisement, I can put it through a decoder of some sort that's going to help me identify if any words or sentences are biased, and help drive me in the right direction and give me some alternatives that I can then add in and tweak.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, that was absolutely phenomenal. But I'm just going to chuck out to the guys over here around. Does anyone have any questions at all for Chris? If you do, stick your hand up. Let's see. No questions. Great. Okay, cool. Well, Chris, that was an absolute pleasure. I really, really do appreciate you joining us today. So we are going to be distributing this over towards so if there are people who watched it now, they will be distributed, of course, but we'll be distributing this in January. Before we leave, I'd love you to just leave a final thought. All of our guests who come on, they leave a final thought, and that'll be what we close on, basically. So we'd love to know your final thoughts, Chris, on the future of work.
Good. In terms of the future, what we're seeing, top trends for next year are going to be around, shifting demographics. So that's having a look at the scarce skills, closing those skill gaps that we have. The technology revolution. So what technology is going to help us support that and drive the businesses and that recruitment program, but also being able to answer the individual choice that people our candidates are looking for. So what businesses have to do to offer remote working or flexible times, and really help deliver what they're doing. So I think there's some really exciting things that we can see are going to start playing out in 2022. Can't believe it's just around the corner.
Tell me about it. We're 2 weeks away, really, aren't we?
Yeah, and we'll just have to keep an eye on and see how things progress.
Amazing, Chris. Well, let's stay in touch, and we'll have you on in 6 months to discuss and see how things have shifted. What do you think about that?
Fantastic. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Love it. Thank you so much, Chris. And again, apologies, but I just want to say thank you to Santino here. Say thank you. Say hello to Santino. He's just been playing around. This is what it's like when you're a single dad working at home. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Great. I think I saw Kevin's hand go up.
oh,
Maybe we've got
okay.
time just for one
Yeah, of
question.
course. Kevin, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to catch the back end of this. I was stuck in a client meeting. And glad you're here, Chris. Thanks for joining. It's exciting to have you here. So here's where, I don't know if this has been discussed, right? I have a theory, and I want to see where your take is on this.
Okay.
Is robots, let's say robots or AI, right?
Yeah.
What's their impact over the next 5 years? Because I have this weird sort of thought in my mind. Let's start a recruitment agency that replaces human beings. So you go in, you assess company processes, and you find technology that can actually replace humans, almost like an anti-HR sort of company. But I'd be interested from your background to get your opinion on sort of robotics and AI in the workplace.
It's a lovely question. So thank you for that, Kevin. I think I can't see that there's going to be a replacement. I think robotics and AI are going to be used as tools that will empower us. And in a sense, it's already happening at the moment. It's augmenting my knowledge of what's happening in the world. If I look at all of us now are carrying smartphones. So if we have a question or don't know about something, we can easily find out that answer. And that smartphone is augmenting our knowledge that we have. We're seeing huge strides at the moment in the I suppose the prosthetics, so limbs and robotics in that side, where we're almost augmenting ourselves with some robotics. If I'm getting a robotic hand or arm or a listening device or a pacemaker or whatever, that these types of robotics are now certainly starting to play more of an active role in where we're going. I think the robotics will certainly start at some point, and it's difficult to pinpoint when, but start to replace some roles. But that's always happened as new technologies come into place. If you remember, like back in when the loom was first introduced, and people threw up their hands and said, this is replacing a whole lot of roles. What it does do is it takes people out of certain roles and pushes them into others. Suddenly you had those people that had to maintain and look after the looms, and those people that then were making the looms, and it creates additional jobs and areas. But it may affect some sectors and industries more so than others. But what you'll do is start to see a shift from people and migration moving into other areas. So as
interesting take.
Yeah.
And so you don't think I could have a robot one day and I could send it to work?
A long way down the future. Certainly more work would be done to free up more time for ourselves, where we could start to do. But what would have to, and I suppose this is more of a political thing, of how does governments and organizations fund that sort of activity? How do we draw a salary from that? And because potentially, not everyone will have their own robot, but sort of automation will take up a number of different roles and guises.
Yeah, and then there's thoughts on what does that mean for real people, and like the sort of basic universal credit that everyone will get, or standard universal credit everyone will get.
Correct. And that's why I said it'd be more sort of political, in terms of we need the infrastructure in place to allow people to do that. But I think we do have some time to catch up and get to grips with how that's going to work. But you're right, Kevin, there's certainly a future in that. long way down the line, Bo.
Well,
Amazing.
you've answered what I wanted to ask you, Chris. Thank you very much.
No
Thank you
problem.
so much, Kevin. And once again, thank you so much, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, subscribe to this channel because we're releasing weekly leadership podcasts where we're talking about the future of work. Thank you, guys, and have a great day.